There's a reason every town's ghost stories eventually find their way to the overnight radio show. Between midnight and dawn, a DJ alone in a lit booth is the closest thing a town has to a lighthouse keeper. One voice awake on purpose, talking to everyone who can't sleep and doesn't want to say why. These three stories come from the people behind the microphone. Keep your hand off the dial. Every small market radio engineer inherits two things from the man before him: a wall of undocumented wiring and a list of mysteries he's given up solving. This story is about item 4 on my inherited list, written in my predecessor's handwriting on a sticky note that had fossilized to the transmitter logbook sometime before I was hired. 1640 kilohertz, night loop, ? Our station sat in flat farm country, and I was the entire engineering department. And 1640 kilohertz, a dead spot at the far end of the AM band, licensed to nobody in our county, was not dead. Most nights, if you parked out past the grain elevator on Route 20 with a decent car radio, you could catch it, faint, steady, patient. A man's voice, older, unhurried, reading names. Just names, first and last, a pause between each, maybe 40 of them, and then a hymn, always the same recording, an organ playing Abide With Me with a fidelity that said 1960s at the latest, and then the names again, all night, every night. The signal was weak and directional. You lost it a mile in any direction, which is why it had survived as a curiosity instead of an FCC complaint. Farm kids knew about it the way farm kids knew about haunted barns. They called it the roll call. They dared each other to listen to the whole loop. I was 26 and owned a spectrum analyzer, so to me it wasn't a ghost, it was a puzzle. An unlicensed carrier wave has a source, and a source has an address. It took me 4 nights of driving triangulation grids. This is exactly as glamorous as it sounds. I ate a lot of gas station taquitos to walk the signal down to its house. And I want you to picture the house, because I still do. A small white house a quarter mile off Route 20, tidy from the road and dead up close. Plywood on 2 windows, meter cage rusted, grass to the knee, except, and my flashlight found this detail, and my stomach did something complicated, except a mowed strip, 1 lawnmower wide, from the road to the porch. Somebody mowed a path to a dead house. The signal was coming from the cellar. You could hear it, standing on the porch, not the broadcast, the source, a tape machine's capstan whir under the floorboards, and a voice, muffled by joists and 60 years, reading names to nobody in the dark under an abandoned house. I did not open that cellar door. I'm an engineer, not a protagonist. I drove home and did the paperwork instead. County records, utility records, and a Tuesday afternoon in the Historical Society Annex that changed how I think about machines. The house had belonged to Reverend Emil Caston, who had run a 5-watt farm chapel station out of his cellar from 1961 until his death, and this is the number that made me put the folder down, 1984. The power was still on because the electric co-op's oldest auto-pay arrangement, a church trust account nobody had touched in decades, was still quietly paying a $9 monthly bill. The names were his congregation, a prayer list, the Historical Society lady told me, recorded so that shut-ins and the sick could hear themselves prayed for by name on their bedside radios. He re-recorded it every week while he was alive. He had been dead for 40 years. The tape machine, a broadcast cart deck built like a tractor, designed to loop forever, had simply received no instruction to stop. The strip of mowed grass was a neighbor, a very old man, who, when I finally found him, said only this, and I've never gotten it out of my head. My mother's on that list. He prays for her every night. Seemed rude to let the path grow over. Here's where the story should end. Quirky, sad, a machine outliving its master. Here's why it doesn't. Before I filed anything with the FCC, I did what you'd do. I parked by the grain elevator one last night with a recorder and taped the full loop, all 41 names, the pause, the organ, again. I'd be lying if I said I only did it for the historical record. I did it because I wanted to know. The FCC file is still open on my desk, one signature from silencing a 60-year-old 5-watt ghost, and it's going to stay unsigned, because there's a version of this where the loop is just oxide and momentum, and there's a version where an old preacher is still adding to his prayer list, and I genuinely cannot tell you which one I believe on which night. But I can tell you I move path now, and I can tell you I listen every few months, all the way through, just in case there's a 42nd name. Radio people fear one thing above all: dead air. Silence on a live signal is money burning, careers ending, equipment failing. Every studio on Earth has alarms specifically to scream at you if the signal goes quiet. So understand what I'm telling you when I say that at my first station, every night at 3:33 in the morning, we went silent for 11 seconds. On purpose. Except nobody was doing it on purpose. I found it my second week on overnights, 3:33 a.m., mid-song, the board just dipped, every fader dropped to nothing, the on-air light held, the monitors went to a silence so total I could hear the studio clock, and 11 seconds later, everything came back exactly where it had been, mid-word, mid-song, like a hand had been lifted off. No alarm triggered. That's the detail that made me cold before I knew anything, the dead air alarm, whose entire purpose is those exact 11 seconds, sat quiet, green, satisfied, like the silence was scheduled. I logged it. Engineering found nothing. It happened again the next night and the next, 3:33:00 to 3:33:11, to the second, a silence with edges so clean you could file paper against them. Engineering replaced a board channel, then blamed the automation computer, then reblamed the board, and then, and I noticed this before I understood it, engineering stopped answering my tickets about it, not rudely, the way a family stops answering questions about a locked room. It was Reyes, the weekend guy, who finally told me in the parking lot at dawn after I'd threatened to put the mystery on the air as a bit. He didn't get angry. He got old, right in front of me, and he said, "Don't you ever make that a bit." And then he told me about the fire. The station was in its old building then, downtown, second floor, an electrical fire, fast in the hour before dawn, and the overnight man, a jock named Dale Werner, 29 years old, 4 years in the chair, did not leave the chair. The fire department transcript exists. Reyes had read it once decades ago and recited it like scripture. Dale stayed on the air, calling the fire in, calmly, giving the address, telling the 4 or 5 insomniac towns listening that he was going to stay on as long as he could so the crews could find the building by his signal. The tape survives up to a point. The last 11 seconds of Dale Werner's broadcast before the feed cut is him breathing, just breathing, close to the mic, having said everything he had to say. 11 seconds of a man keeping his signal alive, because that was the job. 3:33 a.m. The station rebuilt across town, new building, new board, new automation, 40 years of new everything, and every single night at 3:33, on equipment that never touched the old studio, the signal bows its head for 11 seconds. Engineers have chased it through 3 generations of hardware. The silence survives replacements the way a river survives new bridges, and the dead air alarm has never once gone off in 40 years at 3:33, which either means something in the code found peace with it, or means something checks the box every night that says this outage is authorized. I stopped logging it. I did more than that, and here's where you can decide what kind of person I am. I started observing it. 3:31, I'd finish my patter, back time a song, and make sure every overnight for 3 years that at 3:33 nothing was live that mattered. Nobody was mid-sentence, no contest, no caller. I'd built my show without ever saying so on air, around an 11-second moment of silence for a man I never met. You will not find that in any programming log. You'll find it in my mix sheets if you know what back timing around 3:33 looks like, and you'll find it in the mix sheets of the woman who had the shift before me, and, I checked the day I finally left for a bigger market, in the mix sheets of the man who's there now. Nobody teaches it. Everybody learns it. My last overnight, I did the thing you're not supposed to do, the thing Reyes half confessed to having done once himself. At 3:32 and change, I potted down my mic to 0, leaned in, off the air, into a did channel, a whisper into foam, and I said, "Signal's yours, Dale. I've got the light." And at 3:33 the board dipped, 11 seconds, clean as ever, and came back. I'd swear the comeback was gentler that night, a half-second fade instead of a cut. Engineering would tell you boards don't have moods. Engineering also can't explain the 11 seconds, so we're all just picking which impossible thing to believe. I believe a 29-year-old kept his chair so firemen could follow his signal through the smoke, and 50 years of hardware has agreed by some arithmetic deeper than firmware to give him back his air every night for exactly as long as he held it. 11 seconds, 3:33. If you're ever awake at the far quiet end of the dial, you can hear it, the sound of a radio station, breathing. Don't touch your tuner. It comes back. It always comes back.
Request lines after midnight are confessionals with hold music. I hosted overnights for 6 years at a station whose signal covered 200 miles of interstate, which means my real audience was truckers, nurses, insomniacs, and the highway itself. You get regulars, you learn voices, and in my 3rd year I got the caller I still hear when the phone rings after midnight. First call, a Tuesday, 1:50 a.m. Male, 40s maybe, flat calm, not creepy calm, tired calm, a voice like a man at the end of a double shift. No hello. He said, "Dedication, please, for Carol Ann, coming home on 74 tonight. Play her something gentle," and hung up. 6 seconds. I checked the logger. We played dedications. I played something gentle, said the words, "Going out to Carol Ann, coming home on 74. Somebody's thinking of you." The little blessing DJs sprinkle 100 times a week without thinking. At 4 a.m. the wire service ticked, and I read it at the top of the hour, the way you read overnight news, half asleep, until my own mouth caught up with my eyes. Single vehicle accident, Highway 74, mile marker area, 1 fatality, a woman. I won't say the name on this show, but her first and middle name you already know. I sat in the booth after the newscast, listening to my own station play a jingle, and I told myself the only sane thing available. Coincidence, common name, big highway, terrible night. And for 5 weeks sanity held, because he didn't call. Then, dedication, please, for Marcus riding out to the lake tonight. Play him something with some drive in it. Same flat, tired voice. 6 seconds, and this time I did something with my skin crawling that I'll defend forever. I played the song, and I called the state police non-emergency line and told a very patient dispatcher that I had a feeling about a motorcycle and the lake roads, and she took it with the professional kindness reserved for overnight DJs and drunks. Marcus, Marcus, laid his bike down on Lakeview Route at 3:40 a.m. He lived. Helmet, guardrail, luck. The trooper who eventually interviewed me told me the time of the accident himself, and then asked the question that reorganized my life. What time had the dedication call come in? 1:55 a.m., 1 hour and 45 minutes before the crash. Here's where I have to slow down, because this is where everyone, troopers, my program director, the station's lawyer, you, me, wants the story to resolve into one of 2 shapes. Shape 1, a monster, a man causing accidents, calling his shots for an audience of 1 sleepy DJ. Shape 2, a scanner ghoul, some cruel prankster hearing crashes on emergency frequencies and calling in predictions he'd backdated, except the logger's timestamps don't care about anyone's theories, and the logger said the calls came first. The troopers took it seriously, I'll always say that. They traced what could be traced, pay phones, the first 2, back when a few still existed along the interstate, different exits, no cameras, nothing. They pulled my logger tapes. They found no pattern in the victims except the road itself. He called 9 times in 3 years. I documented every one, second-guessed none of them, and phoned the state police every single time before the song was over. And here is the mathematics of my 9 calls. 5 accidents matching his dedications, 4 nothing. 4 nights where troopers ran extra patrol on a named road, and dawn came up empty. The troopers will tell you their presence maybe prevented something those 4 nights, and I will tell you that I have chosen to believe that with everything I have, because the alternative arithmetic is worse. And no, they never found him. No voice print, no payphone print, no suspect. A man with a tired voice and 6 seconds of things to say, somewhere out there along 200 miles of dark interstate, who knew. The last call was different, and it's why I don't do overnights anymore. Same voice, older by 3 years, and for the first time, slower, almost gentle. He said, "Dedication, please," and then nothing, 4 seconds of highway hiss, and then quieter, like a man finally putting something down. "You already play for all of them, don't you? Every night, the whole road." And the line clicked, and that was the last time he ever called. And I sat there with my heart going like a fist on a door, understanding the way you understand things at 2 a.m. that dissolve at breakfast, that I'd just been given either a confession or a blessing or a job. I think about the shape of it constantly, a voice on a phone telling a voice on the radio about travelers on a dark road, warnings passed from nowhere to everywhere, and 5 families who got a state trooper's headlights in their worst hour because of it, and 4 families who maybe never knew there was an hour to be warned about. I never solved him. The troopers never solved him. The file is thin and open and always will be. But I'll tell you how I closed my last overnight shift, 6 years in, final sign-off, 4:58 a.m., because it's the only ending I've got. I opened the mic and I did it myself. 1 dedication, no name attached. This one goes out to everybody coming home tonight. Every road, every mile of it, somebody's thinking of you. Drive gentle. And for the first and only time in 6 years, the request line lit up at 4:59 a.m. 1 call, and I let it ring, and it rang exactly twice, and stopped. You can decide what that was. I've decided it was thank you. If you've made it this far, tonight at the quiet end of the dial, remember that somewhere a voice is awake on purpose, playing songs into the dark for people it will never meet. Subscribe to the hollow dial, because time doesn't heal, it haunts. And if you've ever worked an overnight shift behind a microphone, we want your story. Leave it in the comments. We're listening, and something else is too.